pick that up, close the door, pick up the towel, why are your shoes there? That you think you could just be replaced by a tape recorder and have about as much impact. And so if a signed set of rules actually puts any dent in a 10-year-old sleepover, then I'm signing up.
You're not you're not too against the sort of rules?
Good luck to her. They're not going to work.
Look, she's a crazy mum. I had a crazy mum. I wasn't allowed sleepovers. Not allowed. My mother, Sri Lankan culture, it's like, what's wrong with that? We have a bed, we have a house. So my dad would let me, when you're like 12, 13 and you want to, do that, he'd like come and pick me up at like 2 o'clock in the morning or something like that, bless his cotton socks, so that I could get a little bit of that taste of, sleepovers. Oh. But what a sleepover. I know. That's, I'm still...
You must have had one little wee sleepover, no?
No, not as a kid. Not allowed.
They are a place where you suspend most of your parenting rules. Like, midnight feast. If your kids were like, hey, Dad, can we have a midnight feast? You're like, get out of here. Go to bed. Go back and what are you doing out here? And as soon as they've got a friend over, you pretend to be the coolest parents in the world. Oh, go on then. Have a marshmallow, It's
about excessive noise. It's about excessive noise. It's about screaming. It's about tickling and pillow fights. No.
You've actually taken me right back to the glory that was the midnight feast.
But boys, did boys do sleepovers? Oh, you kind of do, don't you?
Yes, I can recall sleepovers, and it was a lot of fun, because you had the mattresses down on the floor, didn't you? And
got to stay up.
Got to stay up in a couple of hours and watch the $6 Million Man, or on the mat.
Yes,
that was in the afternoons, but the late edition, put it that way.
Yeah.
But the midnight snack, now that was a treat.
Yeah, we're very uncool parents. So
lollies,
we don't let our kids play Fortnite, which so most of the kind of like 12-year-old sleepovers are just Fortnite LAN parties, I think, but not round ours.
Yeah. Hey, look, on a final note, this is great. The humble typewriter is back. I'm sure some may argue that it never left, but of course it has fallen out of favour since the invention of the computer and all its word processing power. But there's been renewed interest, at least in North America, in the old devices, writers looking to unplug. And a Canadian news site, CBA, told the reporter that one of only a few typewriter repair people in North America, he says there's been a tremendous resurgence with people discovering the good old humble typewriter. And as a journalist, Rwani, could you see yourself going back to the office and go click, 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 click?
So I still have a typewriter. I don't use it, though.
You do?
But I do have a typewriter, yep. And I used it even at university. That's how old I am. But I love them. I love the smell of the ink ribbon. I love the clickety-clackety nature, that, the return, all of that. But would I swap it for my MacBook? I don't think so.
Hell no.
No.
What about you, Simon Pound?
I'm looking forward to my two-finger typing technique now being able to be passed off as like retro fashion coming back in. You're like, it's just I'm very up with the vinyl and the, all the things.
And do you still type like that?
Oh, yeah. And I've got an abacus. Yeah.
Well, let's bring back, if they are coming back, then let's bring back the abacus and the,
And then there's the mistakes. And then there's the twink.
How do you do that?
You need the twink.
How do you do that?
Oh, I typed a B instead of an A. And all
and
that,
the clogged up letters,
It's a very satisfying noise.
It's a very satisfying noise.
Good on you both. Thank you very much for being with me, Rwani Pereira and Simon Pound on Tuesday's panel. It's wonderful to have you both on. Thank you to Ali for putting the show together. I'm Wallace Chapman, back tomorrow from 3:45 sharp. See you then.
Te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. E haere nei, an Olympic shooter backs the teenager who says the Prime Minister crushed her hopes and dreams by taking away her semi-automatic rifle. Gun City's Chloe Tipple says kids 6 and younger can be responsible gun users. 2 pregnant women lose their unborn babies after getting the measles. Concerns white supremacist propaganda on campus will scare away Auckland uni students. Winston Peters says no to legalising party pill testing for this festival season. And all eyes are on All Black Ardie Savia. Is he making goggles cool? And Makatu Pies is struggling to make a crust, but receivers hope someone's hungry to take over.
RNZ News at 5. Kia ora, ko Susana Leata with DNA. 2 Auckland women have lost their unborn babies after contracting measles. Auckland health officials have been looking at some of the complications suffered by patients in the latest outbreak. 5 pregnant women were hospitalised, with 2 losing their babies in their second trimester. Senior Medical Officer of Health William Ranger says not all babies suffer harm if their mothers contract measles, but there are known risks.
Complications in pregnancy due to measles is known to occur, and it can result in fetal losses, miscarriages or low birth weight.
Dr Ranger says most women are at low risk of contracting measles, but anyone who is worried should discuss their immunity with their doctor or midwife. The Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters says legalising drug checks at music festivals sends the wrong message to users. New Zealand First has blocked a Labour and Green Party supported proposal which would have allowed organisations to scientifically check the makeup of drugs and warn users if it's not what they thought. Pill testing already happens at some festivals in New Zealand but operates in a legally grey area, which scares some festivals off. Mr Peters says legal checking services would appear to condone drug use.
Taking pills at festivals is a thoroughly bad idea. Now it's been suggested that we should provide all the mechanisms for people to take a whole lot of pills down there to find whether pill taking is safe or not. And we in New Zealand First say it's not safe. Don't do it. If you want to live, then stick to things that are safe.
Winston Peters. The Police Minister Stuart Nash says the proposal is dead in the water without support from all parties. The government is being accused of robbing young people of the chance to compete and hunt with semi-automatic rifles. The comments from the Council of Licensed Firearms Owners, or COLFO, follow an open letter to the Prime Minister from a 13-year-old defending her right to use an AR-15 rifle for sport shooting. The gun is the same as the one used to kill 51 people during the Christchurch mosque shootings and is now banned. COLFO spokesperson Nicole McKee says she recently spoke to 2 teenage boys who had been forced to hand in their AR-15 rifles, which they used for hunting rabbits.
You know, the father said, I have said to my boys, these are your firearms that are now regarded as prohibited, and you need to come in to a collection event and hand them in to the police. And this will be your experience, your first real experience, how things that were once legal can become illegal almost overnight.
Nicole McKee. Fresh from winning significant pay rises, secondary teachers are now hoping to reduce their workload. The Post-Primary Teachers Association is holding its annual conference in Wellington this week. Its members agreed in June to a pay deal providing 3 pay rises of 3%, and now the union is targeting workloads. The PPTA says a low-trust, high-compliance model is putting too much pressure on teachers and it's driving some out of the profession altogether. The death of a Kapiti man in a plane crash over the weekend is expected to leave a big gap in the community. The police have confirmed 70-year-old Mike Hall, a former national commander of fire and emergency, was one of 2 people killed when the plane came down on Sunday. The second person was 44-year-old Norman Cummerford from Paikakariki. Pilot Steve Southey says he trained Mr Hall as an instructor. He says Mr Hall was a good instructor and well known in the tight-knit aviation community.
He was a wealth of knowledge. He's flown all over the country. He's just an all-round good sort of person to have around and good person to talk to. It's a small community and everybody knows everybody, so it's going to affect a lot of people in a lot of ways. Steve Southey says he has many questions he wants answered about the crash. The political party Social Credit wants the High Court to review the decision to allow a Chinese conglomerate to buy Westland milk products. It has filed papers asking for a judicial review of the decision by the Overseas Investment Office to approve the purchase by Inner Mongolian Yili. The party is concerned the OIO may have failed to apply a stricter set of criteria under which government ministers should have made the final decision. Social Credit says Chinese companies own 14 agribusiness companies in this country, making Fonterra the only significant locally owned processor of milk products. The party is also seeking financial support to fight the case.
A lecturer at the University of Auckland says students might be scared off if it doesn't condemn white supremacist propaganda on campus. Posters and stickers promoting a recently launched white nationalist group have been seen at the university this week. The university says the group's views are abhorrent but protected by freedom of speech. Senior lecturer Rhys Jones says the material could frighten off students.
This type of thing does make it less safe for people of colour, people who are subject to racism and other forms of bigotry. So, if there were international students looking to come to New Zealand to study, this might actually play into a decision to maybe not come to the University of Auckland if they see that as a potential threat.
Rhys Jones. It's 5:05. As if he didn't already stand out enough with his physical play, All Blacks flanker Ardie Savea will wear goggles during the World Cup clash with Canada. In a bid to protect his deteriorating eyesight, Savea will wear the World Rugby approved eyewear in tomorrow night's match in Oita. The goggles were approved by the international body in May with the goal of making rugby more accessible to the visually impaired. Savea says the vision in his left eye became blurry a couple of years ago and it has slowly worsened. The All Blacks' Dr. Tony Page says Savea wore the goggles at training this week and they didn't affect his playing ability.
This week he's been training in them twice and it's probably been the most challenging conditions that you get, seeing humidity up to sort of 90% and 28 degrees or so and hard All Black training, and he's done pretty well.
All Blacks doctor Tony Page. The New Zealand basketballer Steven Adams remains committed to winning at the Oklahoma City Thunder despite the franchise no longer being considered NBA playoff contenders. The Thunder are expected to struggle in the Western Conference after trading away NBA All-Stars Russell Westbrook and Paul George in the off-season. But Adams says personnel is the only thing that's changed at OKC.
One thing this organisation does really well is, you keep consistent with the values. Doesn't matter really who the players are, you still got to uphold them. We've got to say we still represent Oklahoma. So it ain't like, this player leaves, it's all good. No, we still have a duty to the people that we have to fulfil.
Steven Adams. That's the news.
Pushback from passionate gun owners.
She didn't have to ban the guns and people's sport and passion.
No regrets from the Prime Minister.
It's those guns where you don't have to reload and you can fire continuously that can cause the amount of harm that we saw on March 15.
And calls to extend the inquiry into the Christchurch terror attack.
This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for reform in this country, and we will only get this if the Commission has time to consult the Muslim community appropriately.
Morning Report weekdays from 6 a.m. on 101 FM, on air and online.
Then on 9 to noon, the price of addiction, as some US pharmaceutical companies attempt to settle huge lawsuits arising out of the opioid epidemic. And after 10, geneticist David Sinclair on the revolutionary science of why we age and why we don't have to. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. For the whole of the North Island, showers with isolated thunderstorms and hail easing for a time tonight and tomorrow morning. Snow to 700 metres tonight and later tomorrow. A strong, cold south or southwesterly change spreads north tomorrow afternoon. For Nelson and Marlborough, occasional showers, isolated thunderstorms and hail during the afternoons and evenings. Bulla and Westland mainly fine tonight, but a few showers, especially inland. A period of rain tomorrow with possible thunderstorms. For Canterbury and Otago, a few showers with hail clearing this afternoon, rain and possible thunderstorms developing tomorrow morning with the gale southerly change. Snow lowering to 600 metres. For Southland and Fiordland, isolated showers tonight, rain developing, turning to showers in the morning, then gradually becoming confined to the coast, snow to 500 metres. And Chatham Island, showers clearing tonight, mainly fine tomorrow. RNZ National, it's 9 minutes past 5.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. A 13-year-old girl is accusing the Prime Minister of crushing her hopes and dreams with new gun laws. that have forced her to hand back her prized semi-automatic rifle. That sparked heated debate around the age at which young people are picking up firearms. Shortly, we'll speak to an Olympic shooter who believes kids as young as 6 can be responsible gun users. But first, Maddie Millen-Turner describes in an open letter to Jacinda Ardern how she was reduced to tears when told about the ban on guns like her AR-15 that was given to her as a birthday present. The gunman in the Christchurch mosque attacks that left 51 people dead was armed with several firearms, including an AR-15. Conan Young reports.
This is my rifle.
It's been tested in every theatre of war for the last 50 years.
There are many like it, but this one is
This advertisement from Colt, the makers of the AR-15, promotes the weapon's popularity with the military. The gun has been used in numerous mass killings, including at Sandy Hook Elementary School, where 26 lives were taken, and in Las Vegas, where 58 people were killed. But it's the semi-automatic's use in sport shooting and the fact this is no longer possible that has upset 13-year-old Morrinsville girl Maddie Millen-Turner.
I was very angry and I wanted to let Jacinda know that because everyone was talking about it and saying I'm very angry, I want Jacinda to know, but no one did anything about it.
Maddie Millen-Turner was given her AR-15 on her 13th birthday, with the intention that she could use it to compete alongside her father at target shooting events. In New Zealand, anybody, including those under 16, can use a firearm as long as they're being supervised by a person with a firearms licence. This doesn't include pistols or restricted guns, which need a special licence or have to be used under supervision at a licensed gun club. This won't change as part of a raft of changes in a bill currently before Parliament. Maddie's father, Matt Turner, went with his daughter when she handed her AR-15 over to the police at a gun buyback event in Waihi last month. He describes the experience as traumatic.
I said, do you really want to go and do this? And she said, yes, I want to go. It's important that I see what happens. And yeah, as soon as they opened the cases and took it from her, she burst into tears and she was visibly upset. And she had a bit of a cry. I must admit there was a tear in my eye as well. It's not easy when your daughter's upset in front of you.
Matt Turner says the 3 gun events his daughter wanted to compete in that involved using a pistol, a rifle and a shotgun are no longer possible now that semi-automatics have been banned.
After Christchurch, everybody expected there to be some changes, and that would have been absolutely fine. But the changes have gone way, way too far. People don't realise that it's 100-year-old lever-action 22 rifles that have been banned. People don't realise that it's the Commonwealth Garden everyday shotgun that have been banned.
Council of Licensed Firearms Owners spokesperson Nicole McKee says she spoke to 2 teenage boys at a hunting expo at the weekend who were also upset at having to hand in their AR-15 rifles that they used for rabbit shooting.
Upon handing in their now prohibited firearms at a collection event, they were in turn offered a box of crayons each. These are boys who expressed in their concern to us the fact that they're not indoors playing video games, but they're outdoors with their parents with good discipline.
Nicole McKee says it's a shame young people are being robbed of the chance to compete and hunt with semi-automatics.
The father said, I have said to my boys, these are your firearms that are now regarded as prohibited, and you need to come in to a collection event and hand them in to the police. And this will be your experience, your first real experience, how things that were once legal can become illegal almost overnight.
But Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern says while she heard Maddie's concerns, the government had to draw a line somewhere.
Maddie can still access guns for the purposes of hunting. We, in fact, even took into account the most commonly used guns for the purposes of hunting and duck shooting, for instance, when we put in place and when we drew the line on what would come out of circulation and what would remain.
The proposed new firearms rules, which include a register of firearms owners, have just had their second reading in Parliament. And Matt Turner is planning on making a trip to Wellington to tell MPs face-to-face what he thinks of the tighter gun law changes when they go before a select committee. Kei o te tahi ahau, mō te hōtaka o te ahi, ko Conan Young tēnei.
And Olympic and Commonwealth shooter Chloe Tipple is backing the team, saying kids 6 and younger can be responsible shooters. The 28-year-old, who manages the Christchurch branch of Gun City, says she's proud of the young shooter for standing up for what she believes in.
I feel her pain. Obviously, I work in the industry and I'm passionate about guns and shooting as a competition, as a competitive sport, but also as a hobby. So it's really sad, it's legitimate. There are people that have literally had their hobby taken away from them. So I share her pain, and I feel just as sad. And I'm so proud of her for standing up for what she believes in and writing a letter.
There are plenty of hobbies, though, aren't they? And even in the realm of shooting, couldn't she just, switch to another gun?
She could, but that's like saying to a figure skater, just do ice hockey. It's the same but different. So, yes, of course you could just say that, but when anything's forced to be taken away from you, obviously there's going to be a bad taste in your mouth. So, there are plenty of other disciplines she could do, but I think she's expressing frustration at the particular sport she's grown to know and love being taken away in her discipline, which is fair enough.
Do you share the same frustration as her? Are you opposed to the changes that have been made and the ones that are coming?
Yes, definitely. I am opposed to it, and I do share the same frustration. I think I share the same frustration in the fact that the guns have been taken away. I think we could have had the same effect if the laws had just got harder instead of actually completely getting rid of these guns. I do believe that the laws should have got harder and there should have been less access to them, but it would have been just as effective if they'd actually just made all of these guns an E-category licence instead of being available on a standard licence. So there would have been ways around it to make it better instead of just taking them away.
So in Maddie's case, she's obviously interested in the sport. You are an Olympic and Commonwealth competitor. The three-gun competition doesn't feature in either of those levels, does it?
It doesn't. And there's a lot of shooting disciplines that don't feature in the Olympic Games. There's only a few disciplines that do, and that's just because it's, I guess, harder to regulate. But
the point is, I suppose, Chloe, that she can aspire to the highest level of her sport, but she would have needed to change to something other than what she was doing three-gun anyway. To go to the Olympics, to go to the
Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Yes, but there are still many disciplines and many sports of an incredibly elite level that have World Cups, World Championships that aren't Olympic sports.
What age do you reckon is too young to start shooting?
When you actually understand what you're doing. When you understand that what the action you're taking has a result. I have a 6-year-old nephew that I've taught with an air rifle, and we have we knock down target, and he understands the weight it carries of the trigger he's pulling has an effect of a target being hit and knocked down. So I think anything younger, or at any age, it doesn't come down to an age, it comes down to when you understand the action you're taking has a result and has an effect.
How old are you now, and when did you start?
I'm 28 years old, and I was in the Mai with Dad at 4 years old, but I didn't start actually using the gun until I was older, probably 8 years old.
Because the thing is, and you would appreciate this, some people will hear that a 13-year-old was using a semi-automatic weapon, and that will, I dare say, make a number of people uncomfortable. Can you understand that?
Of course it's going to make them uncomfortable. The reason it's going to make them uncomfortable is because they don't understand. They don't understand why, and they don't understand how and what circumstance it's used.
So do you actually think it's ignorance, the fear?
I do. I 100% think it's ignorance, because in my world, it's normal for a dad and a mum to bring in their 5-year-old wanting to buy an air rifle. In my world, I was brought up shooting guns and being exposed around guns at a young age. And for me, it's a huge normality. But for the average New Zealand folk who don't actually understand what the role that guns play in this country, it is ignorance.
So could you shoot a gun before you could tie your shoelaces?
I actually couldn't answer that. I'm not too sure, but I was definitely exposed to guns before I could tie my shoelaces, but I don't know if I was actually firing. I couldn't tell you the age I did, but look, it was probably around a similar age.
So at the moment, obviously, if you're the legal age to have a firearms licence, you can have someone supervise you, right? So, and you can be at a pistol range as well, or you can be the sort of age you were talking about. Should we change those laws? Is that too young?
I don't think it is. I think it comes down to the person and the individual. Obviously, we're all going to be around people that we feel uncomfortable lending our car to, or we feel uncomfortable exposing an experience to, depending on the individual they are. But if you're in a controlled environment with people who know what they're doing, in a situation that's trusted and controlled, I don't think it is too young.
So the other changes that are about to be made, the gun register, mental health checks, tougher penalties for breaking gun laws, and a shorter duration that you can hold your licence for before you have to renew it. Do you think they've got the balance right there?
Look, I think the problem with guns and our gun laws in this country is not with the law-abiding citizen. I think the problem is with the people who have the gun, who have guns in the wrong hands. And none of these laws, or a lot of these laws, are not actually following that aspect and controlling that aspect of it. Like, this is the tragedy here, is it's the people who have the guns that are genuine law-abiding citizens getting penalised.
So, Chloe, at the end of the period that you have to hand your weapons in, what do you think the situation is going to be? You say there that obviously law-abiding citizens, in your view, will hand their weapons in when the amnesty ends, and it's the people, the criminal element you're worried about. So what do you think is going to be the end result once the amnesty is up?
Look, I think there are, the average law-abiding citizen is going ahead and handing their guns in. I have to hand my guns in. Do I have a bad taste in my mouth about it? Absolutely. Does it suck? It does. I haven't yet, and I will. I just haven't got round to it. But with the criminal element, I mean, they're never going to hand their guns in because they shouldn't have had them in the first place. So, of course they're not. Like, these evil guns will still be in circulation in the wrong hands, and that's always going to be the case.
How many have you got to hand over, Chloe, yet?
Me, personally, I have 3.
Right. And, as you say, that's going to leave a bad taste in your mouth?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's your message to Jacinda Ardern?
Look, I think Jacinda's been advised by a whole bunch of people that have just been misinformed, and that when you're in this industry and you've got your heart and soul into it, it's a hobby, it's a love, it's a passion. Whenever it's under attack, obviously it's going to hurt. But I still think that there are ways that we could have made it better without actually taking them away. I think they're hurting an industry, they're hurting a sport that has been age old in this country, and I'm seeing the hurt firsthand with the customers bringing them in. I think some of these laws have been brought into effect without actually thinking through 100%. The magazine capacities and rimfires and lever actions. I had a 7-year-old guy come in who has to hand in his 21st present, which is just a little .22 rifle. Like, the blanket rule they've done has affected so much more far and wide that I think they actually probably realise.
Again, though, we come back to the same thing, don't we? You're talking about a hobby under attack. Isn't it better to have, that under attack than real people, flesh and blood?
But the real people, yes, you're right, for sure. But the problem there is not the gun, it's the person.
So when it comes to your sport and an aspiring teenager like Maddie, she's had an upset here, what would your words be for her?
My words to be, hold your head high. There's many other options out there, like you say, and what matters to her, what's important to her. If it's representing New Zealand, if it's doing a sport with Dad, there is another option. I'd love to see her give clay target shooting in my discipline a go, and that's why I started. I wanted a sport that I could do with Dad, and that's what she said in her letter, how excited she was to go to the club in the weekend and shoot with Dad, and that was the same feel for me when I was a kid, and it's still something I enjoy doing. So, there's clay target shooting, there is other paper target shooting. It does suck that the discipline she started in is now not available, but there is other stuff out there.
And that's Chloe Tipple, who is an Olympic and Commonwealth shooter. It is 23 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Let us know what you think about that. As mentioned in Conan's piece, the laws around how old you can be to be, using a gun under the supervision of someone with a licence, they're not going to change. So if you're under 16, in the case that Chloe said, a 6-year-old who she supervises shooting, is that too young? Should we actually be changing that part of the Arms Act. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Now, in breaking news, 3 people are being treated for moderate injuries after a chemical spill at Dunedin Hospital. Fire and emergency services say they received a call about the spill just after 4 this afternoon. A fire service spokesperson says it's still not identified the chemical. He says 5 crews are on the ground and a cordon has been set up on Cumberland Road, which is currently closed to traffic. So some advice there, probably avoid that area. 2 Auckland women have lost their unborn babies after contracting measles. Auckland health authorities have been giving details of the complications suffered in the outbreak. More than 1,300 people have now contracted the disease in the country's largest city this year, the most since the 1990s. Rowan Quinn reports.
5 pregnant women have been hospitalised in the latest outbreak. The Auckland Regional Public Health Services Senior Medical Officer of Health, William Ranger, says 2 of them very sadly lost their babies. They were in their 2nd trimester. Dr Ranger says though not all unborn babies are affected if their mothers contract measles, there are risks.
Complications in pregnancy due to measles is known to occur, and it can result in fetal losses, miscarriages or low birth weight.
However, health authorities say they don't want to cause panic and the risk of a pregnant woman catching measles is low. Dr Ranger says most are tested for rubella when they first see a doctor or midwife, and if they're immune to rubella, they're very likely to be immune to measles. But he understands many will be concerned.
If there's some doubt about their immune status, they can then be offered a blood test to find out definitively about their measles immune status and be provided with advice accordingly.
Public health doctors have been looking into the complications suffered by patients in the latest outbreak. The Health Outcomes Director for Waitemata in Auckland DHB's Karen Bartholomew says the hospitalisation rate has been much higher than expected, about 36% of cases. She says in other outbreaks and overseas it's usually about 10%. Dr Bartholomew says that may be because kids under 5 have borne the brunt of the disease.
The hospitalisation rate was much higher for those aged 0 to 4, which we did expect, and it's 52%, so certainly much higher.
She says young children are at greatest risk from complications and they're still the priority for immunisation. Dr Bartholomew says the most common complication for all patients has been pneumonia, with 65 people admitted to hospital. A further 3 had suffered encephalitis or inflammation of the brain. She says it's too early to say whether any of those patients will have long-term effects from their conditions. Dr Ranger says health officials are hopeful the disease may have peaked, but it's too early to say for sure.
The highest number of cases in a particular week was about a month ago. That's reassuring, but let's look at another month's worth of data and see if we are either flat or actually decreasing.
Dr Ranger says it's possible there could be a spike after people move around in the school holidays, which finish on October the 13th. I tāmaki makauro mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi ko Rowan Quinn DNA.
All Black Adi Savia will look even more like a superhero in tomorrow night's Rugby World Cup match against Canada, with the flanker set to wear goggles for the first time. In a bid to protect his deteriorating eyesight, Savia will sport the World Rugby approved eyewear in the Pool B match in Oita after trialling them at training. Rugby reporter Joe Porter joins us live from Beppu, where Savia has been putting the goggles to the test. Hey Joe, when were the goggles cleared to be used by World Rugby?
Well, they were cleared in May as part of, World Rugby's desire and drive to be more inclusive, which is obviously a long time coming, and designed to essentially allow the visually impaired people out there who want to have a crack at playing rugby a chance to do just that, a chance to get on the field despite having visual impairment or visual problems. They can wear these now, certified or qualified glasses, goggles, so to speak, and get out there and give rugby a crack. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, so people who are listening and not watching, well, these things are sort of, they're kind of a cross between a snorkeling mask and running glasses, slightly bigger than maybe you would expect. Why has he decided to wear them?
Yeah, I think that's a very good description, a sort of a combination between a ski mask or a snorkeling mask and some of those old-fashioned sports glasses you used to see cricketers wearing. He's decided to wear them because he has noticed a few years ago that his eyesight in his left eye was deteriorating and was quite bad, actually, quite blurry when he was only looking through his left eye. It's actually gotten worse, so he's gone to the All Blacks doctor and said, hey, look, what can we do about this? They've come up with a plan to get these goggles into use, and of course he was very worried that if his eyesight in his right eye started to deteriorate as well, he could end up being blind. Now he's got a young daughter, he wants to have more children, a young wife, a young family, and of course he wants to grow up watching them grow up, he wants to watch them grow up and be able to see all the things that they do and keep playing rugby, of course. So he's made a bold move and the right move to get it sorted, and now he's wearing these goggles in an attempt to not let his eyesight deteriorate anymore.
So what have his teammates said about it?
Yeah, they've all been very kind, of course, as you would expect. I mean, it is something to be taken pretty seriously, and I don't think anyone in their right mind would mock someone for trying to keep hold of their eyesight and take all the steps necessary to make sure that they can keep, their eyes working for the best part of their lives. So, no, they've all been very, very supportive. I spoke to Cody Taylor today. He was very supportive of the move, and he says they look pretty cool, actually. They give Ardie Savia and even another element of cool that he already has with his wonderful hair and his tattoos and, of course, his fantastic presence on the field. So, actually, it's not necessarily a bad thing. He looks pretty smart, I think.
Hey, Joe, have you had a chance to try them? Because I'm just looking at the pictures we're playing here, and they're kind of quite thick underneath his eyes, and to the sides. Like, I'm wondering if his peripheral vision, or when he was looking down at his hands, that his range of vision would be in any way obscured by these goggles.
Yeah, you certainly would think it might be the case looking at them. I haven't tried them personally. I must ask to have a go when I next see them at training. But according to Ardie Savia, no, his range of vision, his peripheral vision is just fine using them, and it actually doesn't impair any sort of field of vision in his eyesight whatsoever. He's been trialling them in sort of 29-degree heat with a whole bunch of humidity, almost 100% here in Beppu. Fogging up, I guess, would be another concern.
Yeah.
But no, everything seems to be working really well. Everything seems to look good. It apparently doesn't affect any of his range of vision. And if he has had such bad eyesight in his left eye, then I guess maybe now he's got 20/20 vision. That's probably going to make him even more of a potent force out there on the field.
Okay, that's the mission between now and next time we speak, to give them a crack yourself. The other thing is whether he likes this or not. Do you reckon this is going to make him a role model? I mean, you talked about old school goggles. It's cool for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the NBA to play them. Is this going to be sort of like a stamp of cool for him, do you reckon?
I think you did right. I mean, yeah, it will become, I guess, a bit of a trademark for Ardie Savia if he continues to wear these goggles. And what it does is that all the people out there that have to wear glasses, especially young kids that have trouble with their eyesight and thought maybe rugby's a bridge too far for me, I can't see that well, I'm not allowed to wear my contacts and my glasses on the field, I simply can't play the game. Well, that's no longer the case. So whether or not he likes it, Ardie Savia is certainly going to be a role model for anyone with visual impairments around the world who wants to give rugby a crack. And not only will these kids now have the ability to do it with some legal goggles that are allowed to be worn by World Rugby, but they can see in all black. In fact, one of the best players in the world right now wearing the goggles, the exact same ones that they will wear. So whether there's any sort of self-consciousness among these young men and women that have visual impairments, that'll be gone now, seeing Mr. Cool Ardie Savia himself wearing the exact same goggles that they will be made available.
Thanks, Joe. That is Joe Porter joining us from Japan there. Coming up on Checkpoint on RNZ National, Auckland University management is urged to take a stand against white supremacist propaganda. Makatu crosses its fingers that the town's famed pie business will get a new owner. Someone will be hungry for that. And special Taekwondo champions descend on Napier. We would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the program so far this evening. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. And let's go now to Susanna with the headlines.
An Olympic and Commonwealth shooter is backing a 13-year-old who wrote an open letter to the Prime Minister saying she should be allowed to use an AR-15 rifle for sport shooting. The gun is the same as the one used to kill 51 people during the Christchurch mosque shootings and is now banned. The leading competition shooter, Chloe Tipple, who manages the Christchurch branch of Gun City, says kids aged 6 and even younger can be responsible shooters. She says if those young children are shooting in a controlled environment with people who know what they're doing, it is very safe. Auckland health officials have detailed the complications suffered by patients in the latest measles outbreak, saying the rate of hospitalisation is much higher than previous outbreaks. The Auckland Regional Public Health Service says 5 pregnant women were hospitalised, with 2 losing their babies in their second trimester. And there have been 3 cases of the serious brain disease encephalitis. New Zealand First has blocked a proposal which would have allowed drugs being checked at music festivals, saying it sends the wrong message. The Labour and Green Party supported proposal would have allowed organisations to scientifically check the makeup of drugs and warn users if they're not what they thought. Pill testing already happens at some festivals but operates in a legal grey area. New Zealand First leader Winston Peters says legalising drug checks would appear to condone drug use. Fresh from winning significant pay rises, secondary teachers are now hoping to reduce their workload. The Post-Primary Teachers Association is holding its annual conference in Wellington this week. It says a low-trust, high-compliance model is putting too much pressure on teachers and is driving some out of the profession altogether. 3 people are being treated for moderate injuries after a chemical spill at Dunedin Hospital today in the central city. Fire and Emergency Services says it still has not identified what the chemical is. A cordon has been set up on Cumberland Road, which is closed off to traffic. Those are the latest news headlines. Our next news and weather update is at 6.
Thanks, Susanna. If you're just tuning in, this is Checkpoint. I'm Lisa Owen and Nona Peltier is in the studio with me to talk business. Okay, so who's sounding the trumpet of doom around business confidence today?
It's the NZIER consensus of opinion, and it looks like definitely the business confidence has slumped even further. It was already pretty low, so it's, a net 35% are pessimistic about the economic outlook. And when it comes to their own activity, it's slumped to its lowest level since September 2010. So it's a long time since we've had this kind of sentiment, and, very little seems to be sparking it up. And it's right across the board. And the interest rate cut that the Reserve Bank made, I guess last
time
month.
after last.
In August, right? Yeah, it was a half... to 0.5%. So hope that would spark it up. It was a really big rate cut. It was 50 basis points. And it was a bit of a surprise to the market. And hopefully that would have shocked some into spending or making some investment. It hasn't happened. And in fact, the indications are from this latest survey is that the economy will slow to just under 1% by the end of the year. Now that's enough for economists to have taken their pencils out, made some new calculations, and are suggesting that pretty much all of them are thinking that our official cash rate is going to be cut again in November and again in the early next year to at least 0.5%. And of course, we've seen some economists are even picking a lower rate at 0.25%. So interest rates are definitely going to be lower for longer. And let's just see whether or not that is going to be enough to spur some spending.
Does the survey ask them about what in particular concerns them? Because even at 2%, that's a pretty solid growth rate compared to other countries. So do they actually ask them what's spooking them, or is it the unknown?
It's really the unknown, and it's not so much what's happening here in New Zealand. It's really a bigger picture. And, you don't have to look very far. In our own markets today, the Chinese markets are going to be shut for a week. So as the Chinese are off to celebrate 70 years of communist rule. Okay, so that takes something off the plate. Leading into that, the markets are saying, okay, well, maybe they're more optimistic, but there's nothing to give them more optimism. Every day it's another thing. So we hear rumors. For example, on the weekend, we heard a rumor that was going through the markets that the U.S. administration was going to force the delisting of Chinese companies from New York and the NASDAQ. It took a huge beating over that. And then, back again, sparked
global
back up.
roller coaster.
It's a roller coaster, and people can't make any decisions. So when you're going to invest, you want some certainty. That's what investment's all about. Who's going to put their money down on something they're not sure about, or at least have some reasonable certainty? And that's what we're seeing right across the board, every way we see it.
Okay, well, someone who is making a move is Kathmandu. So they're looking to snap up Rip Curl, are they? This is the Aussie surfwear, surf sports company,
and it's not just Australian. That company is started out as a wholesaler and has done extremely well in a lot of different markets. So Kathmandu is going to buy it for 368 million New Zealand dollars, 350 Australian million dollars. And they expect that purchase, together with their Osbos shoes, as well as Kathmandu, is going to create a $1 billion turnover business. So they have big ideas about where that could lead for them. So they're pretty excited about it. They're going to purchase it through debt, as well as a rights issue for shareholders, and new shares for the Rip Curl's chief executive and founders. And so all up, that really was quite a big move. The company's pretty excited about it. But it's subject to shareholder approval, which won't be known until October 18th. And then there's a whole lot of other things. Meanwhile, the company's in a trading halt, and their shares last traded at $3.05. That was yesterday. So we'll see what happens with that. Anyways, our top 50 index, it rose 71 points today. So that's 0.2% up to 10,997, and the Kiwi's trading at 62.4 US cents. It sounds kind of low, but with that kind of outlook on the business front, not surprising. 92.6 Australian and 50.8 British pence.
Thanks, Nona. Nona Peltier with our business wrap. And speaking of business owners hungry for a new opportunity have been sniffing around Makatū pies today. The iconic pie maker was placed in receivership last Friday after 37 years in business. But the receivers say they've already had plenty of interest from potential buyers, both local and further afield. That's come as a relief to many Makatū residents who say losing the business would be disastrous for the township. Nita Blake-Person and Nick Monroe are in Makatū and filed this report.
The Bay of Plenty town of Makatū is the end of the line as you head off the main drag, and today locals feared it could be the end of the line for one of its biggest employers.
There's three main businesses here in this area. One is the freezing works at Rangiuru, the other is the kiwi fruit orchards, and Makatū Pies. Makatū Pies employs Makatū people. The kiwi fruit orchards and the freezing works, they employ people from all over the place, everywhere. But Makatū Pies are mainly all Makatū people, and it's generations, parents, children, down to their children, even grandchildren.
Makatū Pies, which employs around 45 full and part-time staff, was placed in receivership last week and is now running as a going concern. Jackie Butcher says it's a vital part of the economy.
The parents had it and they've changed it to their sons, and it's collapsed a little bit, I guess. Yeah.
Local councillor John Scrimger is hopeful it's not the end for Makatū Pies.
I did hear a year or two ago that the business was a bit shaky, but it kept on going, and I hadn't heard anything recently. So it was a little bit of a surprise to me to hear yesterday that the business had been placed in receivership.
Potential buyers have already begun checking out the business, and receiver Tom Rodewald says he hopes to make a sale early next week. Pie fans we spoke to were hopeful the much-treasured bakery business would stay in local hands. Liam Tapsell says it would be a sad day for the community if it were to go.
If you're going to lose your job, it's not a nice thing. It doesn't matter what it is, it's not a nice thing. You depend on that job. If you've got a house, you've got to pay mortgage, and if you've got a vehicle, you've got to pay the finance. Lots of other things, raising kids, and Makatū is a very hard place to raise children. There's not a lot here, it's very tough. So they depend on this job, they really do. If it goes, then that could be disastrous for the community.
While Kahi Hanara wants to see local iwi snap up Makatū Pies.
Hopefully that our Māori people, our people from Te Arawata will take a good look at this Makatū Pies, because they say most of our people that work here, or most of them are Māori, working in the pies. And I'm not saying that there is also Pākehā people working here at the pie shop too, and it's really sad because we know the owners of the place that really got this place on its feet, and they're a really lovely couple, and it's very sad to see what's happening today.
This chicken and mushroom pie was one of the last ones available at the Makatū Dairy today. Staff there say they replenish the pie warmer up to 7 or 8 times a day, selling up to 200 pies a day in the summer months. It's the number one thing their customers want, and every local we've spoken to is keen to see the business stay here and to stay in local hands. And while the future of one of the town's biggest employers is uncertain, locals are keeping their fingers crossed that whoever buys it will keep the staff in work and the pies churning out.
Hoping and praying for our community.
In Makatū for Checkpoint, Cornita Blakeperson, TNA.
And don't forget, if you're listening to that one in your car, you can go back later. We'll put Nita and Nick's story up on our Facebook page and online too. University of Auckland management is being urged to take a stand against white supremacist propaganda on campus or risk scaring away future students. A new wave of posters and stickers promoting a recently launched white nationalist group have been spotted at the university this week. Now, the university says the views expressed by the group are abhorrent but are protected by freedom of speech. Katie Scotcher reports.
In April, RNZ reported dozens of Auckland University students were becoming increasingly afraid of what they described as a growing white supremacist movement on campus. They said after the Christchurch mosque shootings, more students were expressing extreme views, and white supremacist propaganda was being plastered on campus walls. Now a new wave of white nationalist material has appeared. Stickers and posters promoting a recently launched white supremacist group. Here's what the president of the university's Students' Association, George Barton, makes of the latest campaign.
Completely unwelcome.
Earlier this week, Vice-Chancellor Stuart McCutcheon told the university's student magazine Crackham the group's posters are unfortunate but are protected by free speech. Rhys Jones, a senior lecturer at the university, is disappointed by that response. He says the university should draw a line and show those beliefs aren't tolerated on campus.
That would really show that we value the safety of vulnerable students and staff more than we do the rights of white nationalists to spread their harmful rhetoric.
Dr Jones says the university's response could put off potential students.
This type of thing does make it less safe for people of colour, people who are subject to racism and other forms of bigotry. So, if there were international students looking to come to New Zealand to study, this might actually play into a decision to maybe not come to the University of Auckland if they see that as a potential threat.
Emails released to RNZ show the ongoing saga is concerning families. At least 2 relatives of prospective students contacted the university in April, expressing their unhappiness with its response to students' fears. One said he was worried his migrant brother wouldn't be looked after on campus, as the security for people who look like him appears not to be a priority. George Barton says families should be concerned.
The impression that students have on this is that the university is keen to show that this isn't a problem. Well, actually, what we've seen, it is a problem. And it's so much better, both from a student point of view and to the outside community, to see the university actively engaging on this.
He says management hasn't acted, so staff and students have.
The VC isn't the only person that speaks on behalf of the university community. The university community has decided that these posters and stickers aren't welcome and they're taking action into their own hands on this.
A small group of students staged a protest on campus this morning. One of them, Rowan Hairmudder, says the University of Auckland needs to create a safe environment for students.
Does it have to take another terrorist attack for them to kind of wake up and realise, oh my gosh, we should have done something? It's just why not shut it down now when he is aware of their intentions and of their beliefs and what they value and stuff, and know that is definitely going against this, and it's creating an unsafe environment at uni.
In a statement, the university says the views expressed by the group are totally inconsistent with its commitment to be a safe and equitable place for all staff and students. But it says the Vice-Chancellor has made it clear the university is a place where a range of opinions can be held and are allowed to be debated. It goes on to say it's difficult to draw a line between freedom of speech and speech that invokes hatred and violence. And until that line is crossed, the University of Auckland has a responsibility to uphold the principles of freedom of speech. I tamaki makodo mō te hōtaka o te ahiahi nei, ko Katie Scott Churahau.
It's about 12 minutes away from 6. I'm Lisa Owen and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Let us know what you think of that. If you're a student or you work at the university, have you noticed this material around the place from this white nationalist group? What do you make of it? Does the university need to do more? You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ or email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. To Washington now, where Democrats have demanded records from the president's personal lawyer in the latest stage of a probe that could remove Donald Trump from office. Rudy Giuliani has admitted asking Ukrainian officials to investigate widely debunked corruption allegations against Democratic rival Joe Biden. Now, lawmakers have issued a subpoena for those communication records from Mr. Giuliani. The request is part of impeachment proceedings against Mr. Trump, spurred by a whistleblower complaint. CNN's Jim Acosta says the White House is now working hard to discover the identity of that whistleblower.
In a sign of growing frustration that he faces the real prospect of impeachment, President Trump is demanding to find out the identity of the administration official who blew the whistle on his phone call with the leader of Ukraine about Joe Biden.
Well, we're trying to find out about a whistleblower. When you have a whistleblower that reports things that were incorrect, as you know, and you probably now have figured it out, the statement I made to the president of Ukraine, a good man, a nice man, was perfect. It was perfect.
That drew a quick response from the whistleblower's attorney, who tweeted, "The intel community whistleblower is entitled to anonymity. Law and policy support this, and the individual is not to be retaliated against. Doing so is a violation of federal law." Lobbing grenades from his social media bunker, the president tore into House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff for mocking Mr. Trump's call at a hearing last week, tweeting, "Adam Schiff illegally made up a fake and terrible statement. Arrest for treason?"
It's a disgrace. This whole thing is a disgrace. There's been tremendous corruption, and we're seeking it. It's called Drain the Swamp. There's been corruption on the other side. There's been corruption like you've never seen.
White House aides have grown frustrated with Mr. Trump's clinging to a bogus conspiracy theory that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that meddled in the 2016 election. A false claim former counterterrorism advisor Tom Bossert says he's tried to ask the president to abandon.
And at this point, I am deeply frustrated with what he and the legal team is doing and repeating that debunked theory to the president. It sticks in his mind when he hears it over and over again. And for clarity here, let me just again repeat that it has no validity.
Over the weekend, the president warned his removal from office would cause a civil war-like fracture. That prompted one House Republican to tweet, "I have visited nations ravaged by civil war. I've never imagined such a quote to be repeated by a president. This is beyond repugnant." Mr. Trump's 2016 foe summed it up by calling the president a destructive force of nature.
A corrupt human tornado.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell says his chamber would have to consider removing the president if the House votes to impeach.
Under the Senate rules, we're required to take it up if the House does go down that path, and we'll follow the Senate rules. It's a Senate rule related to impeachment that would take 67 votes to change, so I would have no choice but to take it up.
Even the president's top surrogates are struggling to spin the Ukraine investigation.
President Trump replies, "I would like you to do us a favor, though."
Well, you just added another word.
No, it's
you said,
in
"I'd
the
like
transcript. you to
do a favor, though."
Yes, it's in the White House transcript.
One top White House official strangely insisted it's the president who's blowing the whistle.
The president is the whistleblower here. The president of the United States is the whistleblower. And this individual is a saboteur trying to undermine a democratically elected government.
Sources familiar with internal deliberations over the last few days involving Mr. Trump and top advisors about his call with Ukraine's leader say aides to the president have warned warned him he faces the real likelihood of being impeached before the end of the year. One source said, though, that aides are divided over this subject, as some are reassuring the president that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is just placating Democrats and won't ultimately drive this effort up on Capitol Hill towards an impeachment vote. And one thing we should also point out, the Wall Street Journal reported earlier this afternoon, and CNN has confirmed that the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was on that July 25th phone call that the president had with Ukraine's president.
And car maker Volkswagen has rejected a German judge's call to settle a customer class action lawsuit over its rigging of diesel emissions tests. As David Pollard reports, the court hearing kicked off the first trial of its kind in Germany.
As lawsuits go, it's big. Close to 500,000 car owners are registered to take on industry giant VW in their bid to win a class action over its rigging of diesel emission tests. Interest in what is the first action of its kind in Germany is so intense that Monday's hearing took place in a town hall rather than the usual courthouse to allow for large numbers of observers. The claim from the plaintiffs that VW car owners were intentionally harmed by the firm's use of emissions cheating engine software. Lawyer Marco Rogert.
That's what we want to find out. We even believe that it was fraud.
VW's lawyer says their goal is to make clear consumers did not suffer any damage. On Monday, the carmaker rejected a judge's call for a settlement. Its vehicles, the firm said, are driven by hundreds of thousands of people every day. In 2016, Volkswagen agreed to pay more than $25 billion in the United States over claims from owners, regulators, states and dealers, and offered to buy back about 500,000 polluting vehicles. In Germany, VW says there is no legal basis for consumers to seek compensation. Either way, Dieselgate still casts its shadow. Just last week, prosecutors indicted VW chief executive Herbert Diess, chairman Hans-Dieter Purch, and former CEO Martin Winterkorn, accusing them of withholding market-moving information on the extent of the scandal.
David Pollard reporting there. And Taekwondo champions from around the world are descending on Napier for the first ever international special needs tournament. Athletes from 10 countries are taking part in Saturday's tournament, including a 60-plus strong team representing New Zealand. Our Hawke's Bay reporter Anusha Bradley went along to a training session to find out how their preparations are going.
In a small country hall, hopes are high. These athletes have been training nearly every day for the biggest competition of their lives. Organiser and Special Needs Taekwondo New Zealand President Ben Evans says he came up with the idea of organising a special needs only tournament after finding overseas games, usually tacked on to mainstream ones, didn't really, meet their needs.
I just felt that the special needs could have better. We could do better for special needs. So I felt that New Zealand was going to make a statement about how you should actually run a special needs Taekwondo event.
Come on, break it now, go. Hit with your heel.
A year in the making, teams from the Netherlands, Canada, England, Ethiopia, Russia, Malaysia, Iran, Australia and the US will take part in the event. The 63 New Zealand competitors have spent the last year training almost full-time to be match fit.
Some of them are training 4 times a week, 3 times, 4 times a week, full-time training for this. And I think they have come very far since the start, so it's great to see them working the hardest for this big event in New Zealand. I think a lot is on the line for them as well.
25-year-old black belt Aidan McCants has won gold at tournaments in Argentina and England and hopes to do the same on home turf.
Basically, just train and get better. Boosting.
How often do you have to train?
Almost like every day.
And so how are you feeling about this Saturday's competition?
Pretty nervous, but I'm a fighter. I'll get by.
So what are you looking forward to most about the competition?
Basically, seeing the people I met around the world again.
33-year-old Megan Chu is another international gold medalist who's got her eyes on the top prize.
I want to achieve to get lots of golds this year, and hopefully everyone comes along and watch us and bring back all the gold medals.
Hawke's Bay is the only place in New Zealand that offers Taekwondo lessons for people with intellectual or physical disabilities. Instructor Ben Evans says while it's growing overseas, he'd like to see it expand at home, as he's seen how the sport can transform lives.
There was one story from a grandmother who told me that, her son could not ride a skateboard, could not ride a bike, and then through Taekwondo they can now do this. Like, it's great for them and their coordination and just their health, their fitness, everything, like their self-esteem, their confidence. I've had one student who wouldn't look up, but now he can, because Taekwondo has given him that good feeling to be able to be confident in himself.
Spectators are just being charged a gold coin to watch the tournament, and organisers are hoping the Pettigrew Green Arena in Taradale will be packed when the tournament kicks off on Saturday. In Napier for Checkpoint, Anusha Bradley.
And we're getting a lot of feedback from you about the issue of guns. This one in from Bud. Bud says, excellent item on the young gal on shooting and guns, etc. Please see attached a photo of my granddaughter if you're watching. This is Ella. I taught her to shoot from the age of 9, he says, and she became a prize-winning shooter for Kendala Rifle Club in Wellington. I'm a keen hunter. She's picked up on taking up game shooting for meat at 10 years old, he says. Now accomplished on rabbits, hares, ducks and deer. She is an excellent butcher with a knife, preparing game for the kitchen. Best, Bud. Thanks for getting in touch, Bud. Others, though, have a different view. This person says research is clear. Children don't differentiate reality from fantasy until about 10 to 12 years of age. This is why schools advise parents that children should not ride a bike or scooter to school, at least until they are 9 years old. And gun use should be similar, they say. Another person says, I can't believe that it is a good thing for kids to be using firearms at such a young age. Another says, as far as so-called sports shooting goes, there are other less powerful guns that they can use. And this one says, again, reasons teenagers don't get driver's licence until later, should be the same for guns.
RNZ News at 6. Ngā mihi nui, ko Susana Leata tēnei. 5 pregnant women have been hospitalised and 2 have lost their unborn babies in the Auckland measles outbreak. 1,307 people have now contracted measles in the city this year. Rowan Quinn reports.
Health authorities say miscarriage, early labour and low birth weight are known complications from measles. But they're urging pregnant women not to panic, saying their risk of catching measles is still low, the same as the rest of the population. The Auckland Regional Public Health Service says most women are tested for rubella antibodies when they first see a doctor or midwife, and if they're immune to that, they're most likely immune to measles. But it says anyone who's worried could talk to their maternity carer and get a blood test for measles immunity. I Tamaki Magoto, ko Rowan Quinn tēnei.
The organisation that checks illegal drugs at music festivals says legalising their services does not condone their use, but protects people. New Zealand First has put the brakes on a Labour and Green-supported proposal to legalise drug checking ahead of this summer's festival season. The Minister of Police, Stuart Nash, says it would save lives, but New Zealand First leader Winston Peters says it would send the wrong message. The Director of Know Your Staff, Wendy Allison, is critical of the New Zealand First MP, Derek Ball, who says testing absolves young people from taking personal responsibility for their decisions.
What we do is we give people an opportunity to make better choices and change their behaviour around drugs. And basically saying that we shouldn't be doing that is saying we shouldn't be trying to save lives. And that is exactly what Derek Ball has been saying. He seems to think it would be better if these people just died. And that is reprehensible in my view.
Wendy Allison. An Olympic and Commonwealth shooter has thrown her weight behind a Waikato teenager who sent an open letter to Jacinda Ardern arguing for her right to use an assault rifle. 13-year-old Maddie Millen-Turner says she uses an AR-15, which she got for her birthday in competitive shooting events. The same type of gun was used to kill 51 people in the March 15th mosque shootings. Chloe Tipple, who competed at the Rio Olympics, has told Checkpoint she is proud of Maddie Millen-Turner for standing up for what she believes in. She says children under the age of 6 can be responsible shooters.
I have a 6-year-old nephew that I've taught with an air rifle, and we have we knock down target, and he understands the weight it carries of the trigger he's pulling has an effect of a target being hit and knocked down.
Chloe Tipple. The Secondary Teachers Union is renewing efforts to reduce teachers' workloads. The Post-Primary Teachers Association is holding its annual conference in Wellington this week. The union's president, Jack Boyle, says it won significant pay rises for members earlier this year, and the next target is workload.
The two bits that we weren't able to nail up through the recent collective agreement negotiations were around the workload issues that we have, where work-life balance has become so far out of whack that we're seeing people leaving, we're seeing fewer people wanting to choose education, and obviously there will be impacts for their well-being. So we really need to get that right.
Jack Boyle says the school system is too low on trust and high on compliance costs. A mass military parade is underway in Beijing as China marks the 70th anniversary of Communist Party rule. The President Xi Jinping led the ceremony, standing in the exact spot from where Mao Zedong declared the foundation of the People's Republic. He said no force can stop China, but Beijing remains committed to peaceful development.
We must continue to consolidate and develop this People's Republic and continue our struggle to achieve the two centenary goals and to realize the Chinese dream of national rejuvenation.
The translated words of China's President Xi Jinping. Mr. Xi was joined on the podium by former Chinese leaders, including the 93-year-old Jiang Zemin. He was then driven by car for a lengthy review of the massed troops. The BBC's Robin Brandt is in Beijing.
This is China showing the world, and I think probably more importantly showing its domestic audience how capable it is, how sophisticated its fighting force has become, and how much potential it has going forward. Make no mistake, there is at the very heart of today's celebrations a military event. They are showing off what they've got and, of course, what they can do.
Robin Brandt reporting. Xi Jinping addressed the recent unrest in Hong Kong in his speech, saying China remains committed to the territory's stability and prosperity. There is tight security in Hong Kong, which has been scarred by 4 months of protests against China's rule. 3 people are being treated for moderate injuries after a chemical spill at Dunedin Hospital today in the central city. Fire and Emergency received a call about the spill just after 4 o'clock. A spokesperson says it's still not identified what the chemical is. He says 5 crews are on the ground and a cordon has been set up on Cumberland Road, which is closed off to traffic. It's 6:05. Jamie Joseph appears out of the running to be the next All Blacks coach. Joseph has reportedly agreed a contract extension with the Japanese Rugby Football Union to continue coaching the Brave Blossoms until the end of 2021. Steve Hansen hasn't anointed a successor, but says Joseph should be a contender to coach the All Blacks in the future.
Jamie Joseph is a very good coach. He didn't become one overnight just because he coached Japan to beat Ireland. You always find it amusing. You beat somebody, then all of a sudden you're a super coach, you know. Coaching's a lot more than just the result. Is he good enough to be an All Black coach? I think he is.
Steve Hansen. New Zealand high jumper Hamish Kerr says there's a changing of the guard at the top level of the sport and he's part of it. The 23-year-old will make his debut at the World Athletics Championships in Doha overnight after equalling the New Zealand record with a jump of 2 metres 30 at the Oceania Championships in June. Kerr's ranked 11th in the world this year and says the dominant high jumpers of the last 6 years are closing in on the end of their careers.
There's a couple of guys who have been up at sort of the top of their game for the last sort of 5-7 years, and they're all starting to get a bit old, so they're dropping off the end, and then there's this bunch of sort of new talent, myself included, coming through into that. So it's kind of a cool opportunity, actually. It's sort of like, generally you could pick the top 3 guys most years, but this year it's just blown wide open.
Hamish Kerr. Manchester United's made its worst start to an English Premier League football season in 30 years. United's drawn 1-1 with Arsenal to sit 10th on the table with just 9 points. It's the lowest number of points United have made from their first 7 games since the 1989-90 season. Arsenal's in 4th spot, 9 points behind early pace setters Liverpool. That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, trading in stilettos for gumboots and learning to share sheep, all for a good cause. We have a window on the world examining the business of private security in Rio de Janeiro. And as always, we're on the lookout for your little piece of heaven just after 7. Your story about the song that takes you to your happy place. That's Nights with me, Anna Thomas, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
Now the short forecast from Met Service to midnight tomorrow. For the whole of the North Island, showers, isolated thunderstorms and hail, easing for a time tonight and tomorrow morning. Snow to 700 metres tonight and later tomorrow. A strong cold south to southwesterly change spreads north tomorrow afternoon. For Nelson and Marlborough, occasional showers, isolated thunderstorms and hail during the afternoons and evenings. Bulla and Westland mainly fine tonight, but a few showers, especially inland, a period of rain tomorrow with possible thunderstorms. Canterbury and Otago, a few showers with hail clearing this evening. Rain and possible thunderstorms developing tomorrow morning with a gale southerly change. Snow lowering to 600 metres. For Southland and Fiordland, isolated showers tonight. Rain developing, turning to showers again in the morning, then gradually becoming confined to the coast. Snow to 500 metres. Chatham Islands, showers clearing today, mainly fine tomorrow. RNZ National, it's coming up to 9 minutes past 6.
Thanks, Susanna. This is Checkpoint and I'm Lisa Owen. What's the right age for kids to start using guns? At the moment, you have to be 16 to get a firearms licence, but younger children can still fire guns under the supervision of a licensed adult. And this won't change under any of the new changes proposed for the Firearms Act. But a debate about the issue has been sparked by the story of a 13-year-old girl who's written an open letter to the Prime Minister saying her dreams and passion have been crushed by being forced to hand in her now illegal semi-automatic rifle, an AR-15. Firearms policy researcher Hera Cook, who is also the co-founder of Gun Control New Zealand, is on the line. Good evening. What's the youngest you've heard of children using firearms, firing guns?
Well, Nicole McKee of the Council of Licensed Firearms Owners says that she first let her daughter shoot a gun when she was 3 years old. And I think David Tipple of Gun City, he has grandchildren, I think they're grandchildren, who have been able to go duck shooting at the age of 4 or 5. So that's the kind of age that those people are heading for to get kids accustomed to guns.
And what do you think of that?
Well, the problem is things can go wrong. We've stopped kids setting off fireworks. We don't want them on quad bikes. We want them to wear seatbelts. We do all these things because the consequences when things go wrong are that they destroy their lives. The semi-automatic that this poor child is talking about could take her foot off. They were talking in one of the recent US gun massacres. One of the surgeons was describing how there were holes the size of a fist in people's lungs. It's not safe for kids to be using these things.
Under any circumstances, do you think? Because obviously the law allows these guns to be used by those under the age of 16, those people who don't have firearms licences, as long as they're under the supervision of someone who does. Isn't that enough?
The guns that have traditionally been used by people we would call children are guns that are much less powerful than a semi-automatic. So she could have an air gun. She could have other kinds of... She could graduate from the air gun to other more powerful guns. 13 and 14 isn't a bad age at which to start learning to use a gun. I think the people that I've talked to, firearms instructors and police and others, have suggested that 13 and 14 isn't a bad age as long as it's done under proper supervision and by a proper instructor. I think we've got a lot of people have been saying to me, but I'm a parent, I can teach my children to use a gun. Well, it's possible they can. And there were people who could teach their children, there were parents who could teach their children to use fireworks safely. But there were a lot of accidents. And kids, this is really clear in the US, kids don't always do what they're supposed to do. They don't always do what they're expected to do. And that's one of the reasons that we protect them until they're older.
So in terms of the semi-automatic rifle that's been discussed today in relation to the 13-year-old girl, well, that's off the table now because those weapons are now illegal. So with the guns still available, what would be the right age? So you still think 14 and 15 for those weapons?
I think over the age of 12. I think that's what would be appropriate today.
So does the law need to change?
I think there's things that we have to look towards thinking about for the future. At the moment, the law is going to achieve an enormous amount, and that's fantastic. And this is a debate that we need to have as New Zealanders.
I suppose the thing is, we are in the throes of changing the law now. So if we were going to do it, wouldn't it be sensible to have that discussion right now? Have you mentioned it to the police or the Prime Minister or the government?
I haven't spoken to the Prime Minister. I did talk about it with police. You know, there is a very strong tradition of boys, starting to use guns when they're kind of age 9 or 10. So this is a shift, and it's a shift. I don't know that we do need to do something about it now, but we do need to be aware that gun manufacturers and retailers have been pushing hard for children to be introduced to using guns, because they want a new market, they want new customers. Their older customers, hunters and so on, are actually not replacing themselves. So they're making coloured guns like Lego blocks. They're making pink guns for girls. This is a part of a big strategy on the part of those who make money out of guns. And we can see Gun City has been advertising to children quite hard, and people have found that quite upsetting. So I think there's a number of ways in which the legislation is going to address some of these concerns. There is issues around. There is going to be an approach to advertising in the new legislation. I think that the 3 gun events, which this young girl, wanted to participate in, they're no longer going to be possible. These are the things that we are going to be controlling in order to make all of us safer.
So you don't think that eventually we will need to change the age at which young people can use a gun under supervision?
Yes, I do think we do. I don't think it's okay to have people thinking they can get
When is the right time then?
Using guns over the age of 12. And we need to...
No, but when is the right time? Sorry, Hedda. When is the right time to change the law?
The law? Look, I think we're taking on an awful lot with this legislation. And I know it seems as if it might be a good idea to do everything at once. And I wouldn't have objected if they wanted to do everything at once. But we have a very strong gun lobby, which is agitating very vigorously. We need ordinary New Zealanders who don't want kids using guns to start speaking up if we're going to do something about it.
What did the police say when you raised it with them?
Well, we had quite an interesting discussion because I think at the time it wasn't something they'd been thinking about. And so really they're one of the people that really we came down on this over 12. But look, this wasn't an official discussion, and it may be unfair of me to be quoting them because we were just kind of sounding out the directions that perhaps things could go in. You know, and thinking about these other areas like fireworks use, like quad bikes, like seatbelts, all the other ways in which we've tried to stop really major bad consequences interfering with the lives of kids.
We have left it to parental discretion so far, right? So why not leave it there for parents to decide what they wish to do with their children?
Because our society is changing, because we are getting this push from the gun manufacturers and retailers, because the Council of Licensed Firearms Owners really is pushing for the most extreme positions that they can get across the line, so that what we're having is something that was more relaxed as in terms of kids picking up guns who lived on farms, who might have been on round-off farms all their lives. We've got a population now that isn't used to guns. We've got a population that has been exposed to a kind of media, you know, to movies, to all kinds of things to do with guns, which are much more aggressive than kids used to be exposed to in the past. So I think we've really got to think about what's appropriate for our society now.
Appreciate your time this evening. That is Dr. Hera Cook, who's from the Department of Public Health at Otago University there, talking about the age at which she thinks it's appropriate for children to be using guns. It is almost 18 minutes past 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters says a proposal to legalise drug checks at music festivals would send the wrong message to would-be users. New Zealand First has put the brakes on Labour and the Greens' supported plan, which would have allowed pill testing services at events this summer. The party says the policy condones illegal drug taking, while advocates say it will save lives. Jordan Bond reports.
The Police Minister, Stuart Nash, started pushing for pill testing after recreational drugs laced with pesticides were found at a festival last summer. He says the testing would prevent people from unknowingly ingesting bad batches of recreational drugs, which will in turn save lives. He has the support of Labour and the Greens, but New Zealand First leader Winston Peters isn't so convinced.
Taking pills at festivals is a totally bad idea. Now it's been suggested that we should provide all the mechanisms for people to take a whole lot of pills down there to find whether pill taking is safe or not. And we in New Zealand First say it's not safe. Don't do it. If you want to live, then stick to things that are safe.
Pill testing already happens at some festivals in New Zealand, but operates in a legal grey area, which scares some festivals off. It's illegal for people to allow their property to be used for drug use. So if festival organisers invite a drug checking service, they could be seen to be acknowledging that use is happening. Mr Nash's proposal was meant to clear up the grey area and make it legal, because he's convinced drug testing would save lives. That's not enough for Mr Peters.
I think it's better to tell people that drugs and drug experimentation is an awfully risky, dangerous thing to do.
The volunteer organisation that runs these testing services, Know Your Stuff, says taking drugs is a risk, but people still do it, so why not make that risk clear and tell people what's in the drugs they were already planning to take? They went to 13 events last summer but can't say which ones or advertise their services. Director Wendy Allison says when people find out their drug isn't what they think, more than half of them don't take it. She's critical of the New Zealand First MP Derek Ball, who says testing absolves young people from taking personal responsibility for their decisions.
What we do is we give people an opportunity to make better choices and change their behaviour around drugs. And basically saying that we shouldn't be doing that is saying we shouldn't be trying to save lives. And that is exactly what Derek Ball has been saying. He seems to think it would be better if these people just died. And that is reprehensible in my view.
She says drug checking has been happening in the US and Europe for 20 years, and there's no evidence that the presence of testing increases usage. The Drug Foundation's Ross Bell says the decades-long approach of telling people not to take drugs clearly hasn't worked, and anything else is head-in-the-sand stuff. They partner with Know Your Stuff at festivals and say since they haven't been arrested and festivals haven't been shut down, it's business as usual this summer.
New Zealand has some of the highest drug use in the world, despite attempts to just say no. We know that the black market at the moment is really complicated with new and very dangerous substances being cooked up all the time. We live in the real world. Bottom line for us, can we keep people safe? Yes, these services do that, so we'll continue to run them.
The National Party don't support the proposal either, and Derek Ball didn't respond to a request for comment. The Police Minister, Stuart Nash, says despite the roadblock, he'll put his efforts elsewhere to see if he can make any other changes. His first piece of advice is don't take drugs, and his second piece, be safe. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi nei ko Jordan Bond, tēnei.
And the police have released a statement on drug testing services. They say the police are aware of these services, but even when the drug is what it seems, the user can come to considerable harm. They say it's important to remember that illicit drugs are generally manufactured or imported by people who put profit above all else and do not consider the health and well-being of users. And the police say the possession and use of illicit drugs is illegal, and prosecution remains an option in order to prevent harm and keep people safe. The Rugby World Cup in Japan is the trip of a lifetime for many New Zealanders, but the land of the rising sun is also home to many expat Kiwis. Some came for love, others for work, some came to visit and just never left. Rotorua man Gareth Hay is one of those Kiwis, and he and his Oita-based Japanese family are massive All Blacks fans. Rugby reporter Joe Porter caught up with Gareth and his son Kendrick, who are going to all 5 games that their city is hosting.
I got a flatmate come in. His partner went to work for a language school, and she introduced me to a Japanese girl, hooked me up with her as a language study partner. And one thing led to another, mate, and we became partners. And so I followed her back to this city, Oita, where I am now. 2 kids, 18 years later, and I'm still here.
Gareth Hay is a huge All Blacks and rugby fan, and he says the sport has helped his kids connect with their Kiwi culture.
Rugby's been a big part of that. We watch a lot of rugby. You know, the kids, my son especially, supports New Zealand teams when it comes to rugby. And if the All Blacks are on, always have mates over here, put the projector screen down. We have barbecues, just like back home.
And he says Japan loves the All Blacks, especially his family and wife, who named their dog after one of New Zealand's current stars.
A lot of Japanese support the All Blacks, even more than their own team. I mean, the All Blacks are just very well liked over here. They're loved over here. So Miyuki, my wife, loves the All Blacks. Our dog's name is Bodhi, and that was her choice, mate.
10-year-old Kendrick is an All Blacks man. He was at Oita Airport to welcome them to his town, waving signs and grabbing as many signatures as he could. So Kendrick, you love the All Blacks?
Yes. They are big, but they are fast.
Do you have a favourite player?
Yes, Severis.
The All Blacks Fijian wing Sevu Reece catching Kendrick's eye, and in a stroke of good luck, he gets to experience a special moment with the actual Fijian team.
My wife entered him into the competition, or the draw, or whatever it's called. 2 kids each game get to hold the captain's hand, right? So Kendrick got selected, my son got selected to hold the captain of Fiji for the Wales-Fiji game here in Oita. My son will be walking out holding the Fiji captain's hand onto the field.
Kendrick is rather chuffed.
Yes, and my favourite Severis from Fiji too, so I'm happy.
Oita is hosting 5 matches, including tomorrow's clash between the All Blacks and Canada, something Gareth Hay says he never thought would happen.
It's just about unbelievable. I mean, we're a city of 400,000, and we're in this bottom island of Kyushu. We've got 5 games down here. That is more than Fukuoka and Kumamoto, which are bigger cities than us. I've got tickets for every game because it's a once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Absolutely. And there's no doubt in Kendrick's mind who's going to win tomorrow's match. What do you think the score will be?
All Blacks 50 or 60.
And Canada?
0.
Whoa. Gareth says he's unlikely to move back to New Zealand and says the safety of Japan makes it a wonderful place to raise children.
It's just such a low crime rate in this country. It's just awesome.
You could leave your wallet on the train and get it back the next day, or with all the cash in it still.
You can leave your wallet in the train and get it back. You can actually drop your wallet in the drinking district, out drinking, and still get it back with all the money the next day. And it'll be in the police station waiting for you the next morning. And it's happened to 2 friends.
But while the people present no dangers, the wildlife isn't so forgiving.
I'm the leader of the wild pig organisation basically around here. So I go maintain all the cages and put the feed in them and reset them once the pigs get caught. And actually I catch most of them behind my house actually. I've caught 8 this year alone, and 80 kg was the biggest one. She was a beast.
And it's not just of the 4-legged variety, with snakes lurking in the undergrowth.
We have 3 or 4 different varieties. We have the mamushi, which is a pit viper. We have them up in the mountain behind the house, but they don't come down. But 2 other types, big black one and like a sort of a zebra-coloured one. They come down. Me and my son catch them, but we only just built a new snake cage recently, and the one we had previously, they've all escaped, and the wife wasn't too happy.
If the All Blacks put on a show against Canada tomorrow, Gareth Hay, his wife Miyuki and son Kendrick will be more than happy. In Oita, mō te hōtaka o te ahi pōnei, ko Joe Porter aho.
And the Duke of Sussex has paid tribute to a British soldier killed during a counter-poaching operation in Malawi. Prince Harry laid a wreath for Matthew Talbot, a 22-year-old who was killed by an elephant in May. Harry was on a visit to a national park in the southeast of the country, where the young soldier worked on a joint mission with the British Army and the Malawian government designed to stamp out ivory poaching. The BBC's Nicholas Witchell was there.
Liwonde National Park in Malawi, a place which should be a sanctuary for wildlife, for elephants in particular. except for the scourge of the poaching gangs, which kill wildlife in Africa's game parks. It's a problem which takes human life as well. Prince Harry laid a wreath at a memorial to Guardsman Matthew Talbot of the Coldstream Guards. He was killed earlier this year when he was on an anti-poaching patrol in support of local park rangers.
Having killed the animal, it is then a race to remove the ivory.
And then a demonstration laid on for the VIP visitor. A supposed gang of poachers who've killed an elephant are making off with the prized ivory tusks. In pursuit, a joint British Army Park Ranger patrol, tracking them through the bush. It ended, unsurprisingly, with the poachers rounded up and in custody. This is a carefully staged example of what happens at the sharp end of the battle against the poachers. But of course, the underlying issue here is the need to conserve nature.
Oh, the tall pikes.
And on that, Harry, who is opening a new section of forest, part of the Queen's Commonwealth canopy today, on the whole question of conservation, he has something to say.
For me, it's striking a balance, right? And I think the way that, I get accused of being hippie for saying this, but I think now in today's world, I think it's more acceptable. But everything is in balance. We're the only thing that's putting everything out of balance. So somehow we have to be able to accept and learn and appreciate what already exists, rather than destroying it and then realising that we need to then recover from it, because we are literally driving ourselves to extinction.
So that's twice on this tour that Harry's spoken up about conserving the natural world. And from a setting such as an African game park, one might wonder who would contradict him.
And that was the BBC's Nicholas Witchell in Malawi. Got time for a little bit of your feedback before we go. This one says, my dad was a deer shooter on the guns issue and a duck shooter. I taught my boys to safely use a slug gun when they were 9 and 11. I have nothing against guns, but assault rifles must be banned, this person says. Another person reckons that around 12-ish is an appropriate age for gun use. Don't think we can leave it to parents, some of whom clearly think that under 5 can handle lethal weapons. That from Julie Rose. Also, a lot of you are kicking into us on Twitter saying that we didn't make it clear that Chloe Tipple was the daughter of Gun City owner David Tipple. We did in fact say in that introduction that she manages Gun City, and her name is of course Tipple, but she's 28 years old. Fully formed adult, I would have thought, with her own opinions. And then this last piece of feedback on the posters appearing at Auckland University. This person says, I'm happy that the university is standing in favour of free speech. I do not agree with white supremacist views, but people have the right to talk about it. Forbidden this sort of expression only makes it stronger. So honestly, I believe it is better to ignore it. Don't forget, you can go back online and check out all our visual stories. Nita Blake Person and Nick Munro eating pies in Makatu.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Auckland public health officials say 36% of people who have caught measles in the latest outbreak have ended up in hospital. An Olympic shooter is backing a 13-year-old who wrote to the Prime Minister arguing she should be allowed to use an assault rifle in competitions. The organisation that checks illegal drugs at music festivals is criticising New Zealand First for putting the brakes on a Labour and Green-supported proposal to make the service legal. Cumberland Road in Dunedin is still closed off to the public after a chemical spill at the hospital which injured 3 people. And a deep 5.4 magnitude quake has hit near Wairoa near Gisborne. Almost 3,000 people reported feeling the shake.
Take the pulse of the day's news every weeknight at 10.
It's difficult because we support the Pharmac model, obviously. We just don't support their decision in this particular instance.
Live with local, national and international stories as they happen.
It's the same with climate change. You've just got to be hopeful that we're going to stop talking and start doing.